Today we're presenting the two stations and the urban design as part of the Bell to Moreland level crossing removal project. This includes Coburg Station, which is a premium station, and Moreland Station, which is a local station. It also includes the restoration of the heritage buildings of the old stations adjacent to those. Just to give you some context, in Brunswick and Coburg to the north of the site, of the city, the project involved the removal of 4 level crossings over about an elevated rail of something like 2.5 kilometres, which gave back 22 hectares of space to the community. Coburg is on the left and Moreland is on the right, so they're separate but quite close at an urban scale. This site plan shows the width of the corridor that was provided back to the community. This is Coburg Station, so there is some associated car parking, etc. there. But the elevated rail allowed areas underneath to be utilised. Previously, connections that were lost across the corridor have been reopened, and with the space that's provided back, there's amenities like dog parks, cycling and pedestrian infrastructure, and landscape and playgrounds. This project achieved a 6-star green star rating, which was the first ever station building to achieve that, and also a score of 98 out of 100 points from the Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Here's a Coburg Station from an elevated view looking back towards the city, and you can see the corridor width that has been gained back there. We took an approach dissimilar to other station projects recently where rather than pods and a canopy type scenario, we wanted to limit the footprint of the building to a singular element and provide that space back where we could.
Okay, so Bell to Moreland Corridor is trying to celebrate rail as a piece of infrastructure that is integrated both public architecture and urban design. We are using large archways at Coburg to reference some of Melbourne's civic spaces and previous public buildings such as Flinders Street Station. This here is Moreland, which is the local station, and you can see it's primarily a stair. We've tried to sort of focus on that stair's relationship to the surroundings and the views out to the city and the surrounding landscape. A tensioned mesh curtain is used along both sides of the stair to really express the location and the rising up to the platform. It also acts as a rain screen cladding and provides views out to the surrounding Gandolfo Gardens and the views to the city. Throughout the rail removal, we've seen screening used along the viaduct on the elevated sections of the rail corridor. They're used to minimise views into houses and adjacent neighbours, and they're also used throughout when they're relating to what's happening underneath. For example, here you can see the viaduct and the screening takes a real step back. It's a very neutral silver so that it's complementary to the existing heritage and touching on that tone of the slate roof. So you can see here how the screens change as they enter the station buildings. We're using colour as an urban marker, and the density and the patterning of the screen changes. Also, you can see the height stepping up to conceal the platform behind, providing full protection and concealing services. So throughout both these projects, Coburg, Moreland and in between, we've really expressed the U-trough as an element to be celebrated. As you step into the station, it's expressed internally. We also collaborated with the wider design team to edit this profile of the U-trough, chamfering the edges, making it more acoustically suitable for the space, but also a softer architectural element. The materials used throughout the corridor are focused on being durable, low maintenance, and also trying to discourage vandalism. Through previous experience, we found that using texture and patterning can help discourage people wanting to add their own mark. And we've also used the colour as an identifying marker. Just the forward.
So under the U-trough along the elevated rail zone, there are large zones of amenity. So this includes separated walking and cycling paths, basketball, skate parks, outdoor gyms and seating. And these are pleasant, enjoyable spaces that we feel make a really positive contribution to the local area. And vibrant colour is utilised along the underside of the elevated rail as a wayfinding device with different zones indicating different activities. And we think you kind of might be like, oh, I'll meet you at the Pink Piers where the gym is, as a identifier. And these are some examples of some of the conditions under the U-Trough. As part of the project, as Lockie mentioned, the existing heritage buildings that are adjacent to the elevated rail were retained, renovated and restored. At Coburg Station, the internal spaces have been repurposed as council function spaces and community spaces. And at Moreland Station, these spaces have been repurposed as public bathrooms for station users and the public using the underside of the elevated rail area. As you can see in the foreground of this image, a section or remnant of the old track has been maintained within this area. And this was really significant. The renovation and restoration of these buildings was really significant from a sustainability point of view, and also that they had been previously quite derelict, poorly maintained spaces prior to this project. And we worked with Track, the landscape architect, for the surrounding landscape area, and water sensitive urban design was critical to the rail corridor, and this ensured a successful healthy native planting to the full extent of the corridor, protecting the neighbourhood community from water runoff and flooding. And just to quickly touch on the construction phasing and methodology of this was really important, and there were simple steel structural buildings that could be easily constructed in terms of the phasing of the construction. So, for instance, half the station building was constructed whilst the train was continued running to the underside, and then the second half of the station on the other side of the platform was constructed. Within 6 months, and with 24/7 construction sites, these buildings and the surrounding area were fully up and running. The public response to the buildings and the urban design have been really positive, and we thought this was a really nice sentiment in the Saturday paper. It was written by Naomi Stead, and it said, "A young couple are waiting for someone at the end of their street, which formerly stopped dead at the rail line and now opens to a lively pedestrian thoroughfare. Their friend they're waiting for arrives and said, 'This is way better, there's a kind of spot here.'" And we think that's a really nice sentiment that reflects the project well.